Hello, my name is Vince Bovino. I am the principal consultant with Bovino Consulting Group. We are a veteran-owned company. As we move through this presentation, if you have questions, please send them to me through chat. I will do my best to respond to them. If the answer requires an expansion of time, I will ask you to call me or send me an email. Today's topic is huge and our time is limited. The content of today is a fusion of our experience designing, developing, and launching over 250 operational excellence plans through mostly the United States, some in Canada, a few in South America and Australia. The examples in this presentation are primarily from manufacturing. However, the principles and concepts and ideas and approaches have direct application to all business sectors. I would like to begin by asking a few pivotal questions. And the first question is, does performance improvement thinking and behavior penetrate every corner of your organization? And number two, do your employees sprint the extra mile every day to improve operating performance, profitability, and customer service? If the answer is yes, you're in great shape. If the answer is no, and you don't know, the content of this workshop will be of great value to you and your company. So where do you start? It all begins by you putting together some very basic statements of strategy and establish some operating performance goals, and then define your core values. And once those are in place, you can then redesign or design the operating excellence model that we're going to talk about to support the achievement of your strategy and your goals and to reflect your core values. So let's be clear, the objectives of operational excellence are twofold. One, to quickly, significantly, and on a sustained basis improve the company's operating performance and profitability. And number two, to produce high quality products with excellent on-time performance and superb customer service. The question that always comes to us, and it's a very legitimate one, is what are the anticipated results and outcomes that we can achieve if we launch this operating excellence model? And I share them what other companies have achieved. 15 to 40% gains in employee productivity. That's units produced per paid hour worked. And I'll tell you 40% is on the top end. 5 to 30% reduction in non-labor cost per unit, 20 to 60% improvements in product quality, improvements in safety, and on-time shipping. However, there are improvements that take place, and we call them cultural shifts, and some of them are quite important and have huge value. This first one talks about organizational alignment, near perfect organizational alignment. That's everybody in the enterprise focused on the same set of goals. Silo thinking, that's department focused thinking, is eliminated and folks begin to work on what's best for the overall organization. Employees who've been left for dead have fire in their belly. Communication reaches new heights. Excitement and energy from employees at all levels of the organization. Those are some of the cultural shifts that take place. In addition, employees begin challenging non-performing peers. And when that happens, you've hit the home run. Shift-to-shift competition is converted to shift-to-shift cooperation. How can Shift A set up Shift B to improve their performance? Employees realize that improved performance equals greater incentive pay, and this whole notion of engagement as being something unique and separate and isolated, it becomes the norm. Employee engagement becomes the norm. The four powerhouse systems include a two-tier performance measurement system, an incentive pay system for all employees in the business unit, a performance communication system with 8 major communication events, and lastly, a performance improvement team system with trained teams of employees strategically positioned throughout the organization to capture and implement employees' ideas for improvement. The most important takeaway from this presentation is the key to a successful operational excellence plan is linking these 4 systems together. We're going to discuss how we link these 4 systems together. It all begins with the KPIs, or the key performance indicators. These are the essence of the performance measurement system. So let's assume there are 7 of them. Now, the question is, how do we link the incentive pay system to them? The KPIs are the foundation of the incentive pay system. So what will happen is you will build an incentive pay system around each of the 7 key performance indicators. And by doing that, the incentive pay system will be perfectly linked to the business drivers. Move to the right of the slide and you will read that the KPIs are the centerpiece of the performance communication system. And in that communication system, the primary information that's shared is the performance of the key performance indicators and the incentive pay earned for improving the key performance indicators. Now we move to the left side of this slide and we look at that red oval, and it reads that KPIs are the focus of the performance improvement teams. So now how do we link those performance improvement teams to the KPIs? It's really simple. When they get together to talk about ways to improve the operating performance, they are laser focused on the 7 key performance indicators. And once you build those 4 systems together and link them together, you have a powerhouse system. Integrity is critical. Employees have to have confidence and trust in the initiative, especially if there's an incentive pay system. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is to introduce the whole notion of designing the plan with a design team, an in-house design team. Top tier operational excellence initiatives, ones that are outrageously successful, are superbly designed and rigorously implemented. As we go through this presentation, we will talk about each of the 4 systems and give you strong recommendations on the design. The design team is a cross-section of employees made up of leadership, production and maintenance, admin, and technical folks. The in-house design team is a blue ribbon team of employees selected by management. Their role is to recommend and not decide. The final decisions will be approved by a senior leadership team. The responsibilities of the design team are well defined. They are change agents. They represent a cross-section of the organization, and most of all, they create credibility and ownership in the plan. They own the plan from beginning to end. In a large organization, 300 or 400 people, the design team may be comprised of 7 to 15 employees. In a smaller organization, obviously that number will be reduced. If you would like to find out the selection criteria for the design team, pop me an email and I'll send that criteria to you. The design team is responsible for making recommendations surrounding 36 plan design features. Here are 10 examples. If you want the list of the full 36, send me an email and I will definitely respond to you. The first one up here is departments and employees that are included or excluded. Number 2, how do we deal with temporary employees from an outside agency? Should we build a no fault, no excuse provision in your plan? I strongly recommend you do that. How do we establish performance baselines? A baseline is that performance level for each KPI that must be exceeded in order to earn incentive pay. And then there's the whole issue of building the incentive pay fund, how to do that. And then number 6 is really a critical one. Now that you have the sum of money or you have the fund developed, how do you distribute those monies to employees? What's the ideal performance measurement period or incentive pay measurement period? We're going to show you a model later on in this session. It is the ideal model. It's used by 100% of our clients, and I'm sure it's different than what most of you are familiar with. Number 8, what percent of the gains are distributed to employees? And how do you deal with management's desire to often put caps on incentive pay systems? And then lastly, on an annual basis, how do you go about moving the baselines? If you move the baselines too far or too often, you will kill your plan in 1, perhaps 2 years. If you don't move them at all, you're going to continue to pay for the same level of performance year after year. First up today is the performance measurement system. The most solid principle of improvement is what gets measured gets done. The performance measurement system is the foundation. It's the core of operational excellence. The ideal model for operational excellence is a 2-tiered performance measurement system. The first tier are key performance indicators, and we already talked about those. We'll give you a very precise definition in a few moments. And then the second one is also very important, which are line of sight targets. And you're going to find out these are mini departmental goals as opposed to the key performance indicators being macro business unit metrics. So let's take a look at a definition, a precise definition of a key performance indicator under the model that we're talking about today. These are measures that performance the overall business unit, whether it's a plant, mine, mill, distribution center, refinery, whatever it happens to be. They are macro measures that drive business success. They measure results and outcomes. That's absolutely critical. Remember, measure results and outcomes, not processes, not efforts or activities. KPIs are monthly measures. The number of KPIs is never fewer than 4 and seldom more than 7. If you have more than 7, there's a risk you will fog employees' focus as to what they need to work on. And lastly, KPIs are measures that drive the incentive pay system. Know that. Now, we want to be sure that we avoid vanity measures. Keep in mind that term, vanity measures, is kind of an interesting one. Vanity measures are measures that make you feel good. However, when you achieve them or you perform well against them, they don't move the operating performance or profitability needle. I could go through a long list of vanity measures. They are frequently activities like the percentage of people that attended the safety meeting. Is that important? Of course it is, but it doesn't rise to the level of a KPI. Attendance. Is that important? Of course it is, but it doesn't rise to the level of a KPI. So remember, KPIs are big picture, macro measures. KPIs build organizational alignment. KPIs are the beam of light upon which all employees focus their energy. This is near perfect organizational alignment. I had one senior executive tell me that the value of this alignment is immeasurable. Let's put it in real simple terms. Organizational alignment is nothing more than getting all the employees on the same page with the same goals of improving the KPIs. We frequently see 3 KPI categories. Sometimes there's 4, but I'd like to review 3 KPI categories. On the left, you see productivity-focused KPIs, and I'm going to introduce 2 of them to you in a few moments. And then in the center, there are customer-focused KPIs, and I will also introduce two of them to you. On the far right-hand side, we see a category called safety-focused KPIs. Sometimes in some organizations, it's safety and environmental-focused KPIs. Now let's begin with our productivity-focused KPIs. The first one, which is a very common one, I call it cost productivity. These are controllable, non-labor cost per equivalent unit produced. Controllable costs are those things that employees have some degree of control and influence over. And the way you establish that is really simple. You pull up the chart of accounts, and with the design team, you go through them along with some help from the financial folks. You go through them and ask yourself a simple question. Do employees, not all employees, but do employees have some degree of control and influence over this item? If they do, you keep it in. If they don't, you take it out. For example, property taxes, obviously something you take out. Depreciation, more than likely you take that out. A fee that gets sent to the corporate headquarters, more than likely you would take that out. Now there's another productivity measure. It's called employee productivity. These are equivalent units produced per paid hour worked. So it's output per paid hour worked. However, if you're making large items, like you see here, the trailer, it's the paid hours worked per equivalent unit produced. There are two measures of employee productivity that financial people like, and I would encourage you not to use them, as they are not good measures of employee productivity. They truly don't measure what employees do. Let's look at two of them here. The first one is labor cost per unit of output. You built your baseline assuming last year's labor cost per unit of output, and as you move into the new year, the company increased base pay by X%, and also your employee benefits cost increased. So consequently, what we'll have is labor cost per unit of output will go up, and there will be zero payout to employees. Not a good measure. So the next one that is also not a good measure for employee productivity is labor cost as a percent of sales. So let's talk about this one. As you move forward, the market is hot. Your salespeople increase the price of your product, and all of a sudden, labor cost as a percent of sales drops. It drops not because of what employees are doing, but it drops because of a hot market. In that case, you would be paying out employees a very significant sum of money on the incentive system, and it would not be a result of what they did or didn't do, but it would be the result of changing market conditions. So don't use labor cost as a percent of sales. We just talked about two productivity measures. Now let's take a look at two customer-focused KPIs. Number 3 here is product quality. In this case, what we're doing is we are measuring product quality as viewed by the customer. So it's an external measure of product quality. Do not incentivize self-reporting internal measure of product quality. It's a great thing to measure internal product quality, but don't incentivize it, because quite frankly, if it's self-reporting, all of a sudden the results will look miraculous overnight. So we want to measure product quality as viewed by the customer. Now, let's all take a look at another customer-focused KPI, which is on-time performance. Lots of folks measure on-time percent. Pretty easy to do. But one of the things that they fail to do is to take a look at that other measure, and that is, of those things that did not go out on time, how late were they? So the two measures of on-time performance are on-time percent and average days late. Let's take a look at a safety-focused KPI. In this particular case, we're talking about safety results. And we're going to measure two things: OSHA frequency rate and OSHA severity rate. These are classic measures that have been in place for decades, and they are really quite good measures and easy to build an incentive pay system around. The performance measurement system has two tiers. The first are the KPIs, and we already discussed those. The second tier are the line of sight targets. So let's take a deeper look at LSTs. LSTs are developed by the team or department employees. They own the measures. These are mini performance measures specific to the team or the department. They are not measures at the larger business unit level. Those are the KPIs. Their number is somewhere between 2 to 5 for each team or department. These are visual displays of performance and timeline charts, and we're going to show you what one of those looks like in a few seconds. And they can measure processes, activities, results, and outcomes. LSTs can be daily, weekly, or monthly measures. LSTs are not incentivized. We do not recommend incentivizing departmental performance. However, doing well on LSTs in a department will have a positive impact on the overall business unit KPIs. LSTs allow employees to see and understand how they have a direct impact on the big picture. And LSTs are leading indicators of month-end KPI results. Let's face it, throughout the entire business unit, if all of the LSTs are doing well, there's a high probability that you'll be doing well on the KPIs and have an appropriate incentive pay. We just defined a line of sight target. Now let's take a look at an actual line of sight target graph. Really simple. Down in the bottom, we see the sequence of each day. The red line is the baseline. Each blue dot represents daily performance. The blue line represents the 28-day average performance of all of those dots, and the green line represents the target. And by the way, the employees in this particular department got together and they developed the positioning of that green line. They established that target. They own it, and that's a critical important piece here. Now, the real value of the line of sight target chart is not the fancy graph and the display of the data. It's the leader of the business unit of the department meeting with the folks on a regular basis, in this case daily, and talking about their performance and identified what went well and how do we replicate that, and if something went wrong, what do we have to do to get back on track. Here are some examples of LSTs. Cost of department supplies, overtime rate, equipment availability, absentee rate, scheduling errors, property and equipment damage, equipment utilization, number of equipment setups, vendor discounts, delivery errors, following production schedule, order to delivery cycle time, first pass quality, departmental scrap rate. The list is endless. The motivational principle behind LSTs, or line of sight targets, is quite simple. Performance improvement requires visibility to the current results and trends. Performance significantly improves when employees are close to the performance being measured, and the measure is frequently communicated to employees. Now, how do we create the linkage between what employees do and achieving the goal and the strategy? By now, you have the picture. Every employee takes action or inaction, and based upon that, that will have an impact on the departmental or team line of sight targets. If the line of sight targets are doing well, that will impact the KPI results and the incentive pay, which drives business results and supports the overall goals and strategy of the business. So now what we've done is we've created the linkage between what an employee does and achieving the organization's goals and strategy. The incentive pay system now enters center stage. Incentives drive performance. They will supercharge any continuous improvement effort. Incentive pay systems are the power behind operational excellence. They are the accelerant that changes the way employees perform. It is really simple. If you want something, incentivize it. Some companies get that concept and some companies don't get it. And those that don't get it leave somewhere between 15 and 20% unrealized gains on the table. Across the business landscape, companies are constantly working on improving operating performance and efficiency and quality and so on. But sooner or later, employees begin to ask the question, what's in it for me to improve the operating performance? The warm and fuzzy answers just don't cut it anymore. The harsh core reality is if you want to achieve the not yet achieved, take a look at designing and implementing an incentive pay system. One of the top 3 employee complaints is, I'm not making enough money. A well-designed incentive pay system will all but eliminate that complaint. And here is a happy employee. The first law of economics is not supply and demand. The first law of economics is incentives matter. We have developed 24 incentive pay system principles. We use these principles when we design an incentive pay plan, and we also use them when we evaluate another company's incentive pay plan that is not delivering results. So let's take a look at these principles. Number 1, the incentive pay system must be ultra transparent and scream integrity. And we've already talked about that. The incentive pay system must be fair to the shareholders, the owners, fair to employees, and responsive to customer requirements. Number 3, measure and incentivize what you value and the behaviors that you seek. And that goes hand in glove with number 4, which is never incentivize the wrong behaviors or results. Every time you put in place an incentive component, ask yourself the question, what are the possible unintended consequences? Sometimes companies put in an incentive pay system and it drives the wrong results. It produces the wrong behavior. Number 5, establish 4 to 7 key performance indicators. Number 6, the performance indicators must to some reasonable degree be influenced and or controlled by employees. Every employee must be able to impact one or more of the key performance indicators. Principle number 7 and number 8 go hand in glove. The incentive pay must be driven by improved outcomes and results, not improved processes, activities, or in the case of number 8, effort. I don't know how to measure effort. I do know how to measure and incentivize outcomes and results. Principle number 9, the incentive pay must be the result of quantifiable and measurable improvements compared to an established baseline. Principle number 10, the performance baseline for each key performance indicator must be achievable. The baseline for every KPI represents the average historical performance of the most recent 12 months. And by the way, the baselines stay in place for a full year, and then you go through an adjustment process. Principle number 11, the incentive pay system distributes 35% of the value of the quantifiable improvements above the baseline to employees. Principle number 12, small incremental improvements above the baseline are measured and incentivized. Principle number 13 is an interesting one. Incentive pay systems must be uncapped. And uncapped incentives produce uncapped performance. The flip side of that is capped incentive pay systems will cap performance. We've seen that happen over and over and over. And one of the first things we do when we work with a company that has an existing system in place is see what happens when you uncap the incentive pay system, and invariably performance goes up. Principle number 14 is super simple. The incentive pay earned must reflect fluctuations in operating performance. That simply means when the performance goes up, the incentive pay goes up. When performance drops, the incentive pay drops. Principle number 15, reasonable improvement levels must result in an incentive that is considered motivational to employees. So the question comes to us frequently, and that is, what is the level of pay, defined as percent of pay, that begins to change people's behavior? And what we found, based on a survey of 3,552 employees from a wide range of industries, we found that 74% of those employees said they would begin to think and perform differently, positively, in the workplace setting if they could reasonably achieve a 5 to 7% bonus. So that's an interesting number to take a look at. Principle number 16 and 17 are somewhat contradictory, but follow carefully, and I think you'll see how they both make sense. The incentive pay is frequent and close in time to the performance. That is, frequent performance measurement periods are far better than long-term measurement periods. However, from the motivational standpoint, principle number 17 says the incentive pay system measures and rewards sustained performance. So from the motivational standpoint, we clearly know that a shorter term incentive system generates greater results. No doubt about it, because it's alive, it's real, and people can touch it and feel it and see it on a very regular basis. The flip side of that is senior executives, managers want sustained performance, which is perfectly acceptable. So how do you accomplish both of those? And watch carefully, and I'll show you how we do that. This is the performance reward cycle chart. On the left-hand side, we see the performance period ending. In the middle column, we see the performance measurement period. And on the right-hand column is the month in which the payout occurs. So for the month of January, let's go back in the upper left-hand corner. For the month of January, we are going to measure the average performance of all the KPIs for November, December, and January. And assuming there's a payout, it would be distributed in February. Now go back to the left-hand column. For the month of February, we are now going to drop November, and we're going to measure December, January, and February's average performance of all the KPIs for a distribution for a payout in the month of March. Go back to the left-hand side in yellow for the month of March, and you know where I'm going. We're going to measure January, February, March's performance for a payout in April. So essentially what you have here, it's not a quarterly plan. It's a 3-month rolling plan. Each month, employees are eligible to be financially stimulated for their performance based on what they did during the most recent 3 months. So we're achieving 16 and 17, the principles 16 and 17. Frequent financial stimulation, yet again, sustained performance. Enter principle number 18, avoid minimal incentive payouts. When companies distribute an insignificant payout, employees' reaction is always negative. Design teams normally recommend that if the incentive fund is not 2 or 3% of payroll, the fund is rolled over to the next month. Nothing is kept. The total fund is rolled over to the next month. I was working with a design team in a company in Georgia and raised this issue of minimal incentive payouts. And in the course of doing that, a young woman on the team said to me, "I'm really glad we're addressing this issue." And I asked her why. And her response was, "Well, last month I looked at the payroll stub and there was a line item called incentive pay, and next to that there was a number and it was 16 cents. Next up, principle number 19. Every KPI must have a visual incentive pay fund chart that displays a performance baseline, which we display as a red bar, B, actual performance, C, actual earned incentive pay, and D, various potential incentive pay for various performance levels. Let's take a look at an example. This is an example of a visual cost productivity fund chart. On the horizontal axis, highlighted in yellow, you see this unit, this company produced 16,500 units. And on the vertical axis, also highlighted in yellow, they produced that 16,500 units at $112.40 a unit. As you can see, that's a $2 per unit improvement above the red baseline. So $2 per unit times 16,500 is $33,000 times 35%. Remember, we distribute 35% of the value of the improvement to employees, which gives you the $11,550 highlighted in green in that yellow shaded area. Now, what's more important, or equal importance about this particular fund chart, is see what would happen if the employees produced 18,000 units at a cost of $111.20. You would see in the upper right-hand corner, the fund would grow to $20,160. So employees can see exactly where they performed, how much money they earned for that performance, and what they could have earned at different levels of performance. A very, very powerful visual image. This is a cover on the report card, and principle number 20 is the total incentive fund is the sum of the plus and minus of each KPI's incentive fund. So in this particular example, everything is positive, and there's a total fund of $22,209. Principle number 21 describes how to distribute an incentive pay fund as a percent of eligible pay. You begin with the incentive pay fund. In this case, it's $22,209. You take the total eligible payroll of $277,612. Simple division will get you an incentive percent of 8. Multiply the 8% times each employee's individual eligible pay. In this particular case, the example is an employee's eligible pay was $3,200. So 8% times $3,200 is $256. If you do it this way and you include for salaried people all of their salary, and for hourly people their straight time and their overtime, you will be in compliance. For the hourly employee, you'll be in compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. Principle number 22 is super simple. Distribute earned incentive pay to employees as soon as possible after the end of the performance measurement period. In most cases, monies can be distributed to employees within 2 or 3 weeks after the end of the performance measurement period. Although 99% of our clients choose traditional incentive pay, this slide showcases 2 very different examples driven by culture of companies allowing employees to choose between traditional incentive pay or converting their earned incentive pay to something of value to them. Principle number 24 is what I refer to as a sanity check. We want to be sure that when employees do well through the incentive pay system, shareholders also do well. So it's important to validate and test the incentive pay earned for each KPI against 3 performance assumptions. And the design team can come up with those performance numbers are. We look for an easy level of improvement, moderate level of improvement, and an aggressive level of improvement. And after we identify what those levels of improvements are by each KPI, we test all KPIs together and against the same set of performance assumptions. We then calculate the payout to employees and the net gain to the shareholders. If you do this and the outcome is as you anticipated, that when employees do well, shareholders also do well, senior managers will not be interested in putting a cap on the plan. On a recent plant tour with a general manager, we approached an individual who was operating a press. He put in chunks of metal, the press came down, bent the metal, and he then set it aside. I asked the general manager if I could go speak to the individual, and of course he said sure. And as I approached the individual, I asked him, how many of these do you make a day? And he looked at me and said, I don't know. And then I asked him, how many should you make a day? And his refrain was the same, I don't know. And then I asked him, how do you know if you're doing a good job? And he said to me, nobody yells at me. I'm convinced there's a better way to run that particular department. An uninformed workforce is unquestionably an underperforming workforce. Your communication system, that is the events, the documents, the presentations, must be superbly designed and rigorously executed. When it comes to the design, they should be clean, visible, and simple. If you balance a presentation that is data heavy versus simplicity, always land on the side of simplicity. Speak the everyday language of your employees. Your employees understand. Last month, our forklift drivers damaged $400,000 in finished goods. We had to scrap them, and as a result, we have to remanufacture them. They understand that. On the other hand, employees' eyes will begin to glaze over if you start to give them information that is 4 digits to the right of the decimal, and you start talking about net present value, return on invested capital, EBITDA, and accelerated depreciation. As leaders, when you think you've done a good job communicating, you are only halfway there. Once senior leadership makes the decision to move forward with an operational excellence initiative, the first major communication event is to announce that the operational excellence initiative will be developed. And you want to communicate the implementation date, target implementation date, the objective of the initiative, and a quick overview of the 4 systems. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, that an in-house design team will be developed, put together, and used to design and implement the initiative. The second major communication event is a contest to name the initiative and design a logo. The contest helps build employee ownership and understanding of the 4 systems because the submissions from employees to the name and/or logo of the initiative should reflect the basic concepts of measures, incentives, communication, and teams. After the plan has been approved by senior leadership, the design team, not necessarily the senior managers can be there, but the design team meets with employees in small groups to present the final plan using a PowerPoint presentation and distributing a booklet to every employee. Now that takes care of the current employees. The next slide talks about what do we do with the new people that come on after this presentation. Communication event number 4 is to introduce new employees to the basic principles and concepts of operational excellence. The 2 documents that we recommend using is a mini employee booklet, nowhere near as complex as the complete booklet that you presented to your current employees, but for new employees, a mini booklet, maybe 4 pages at the outside, and then a brief smart talk. A smart talk is an animated, narrated, 15-minute presentation that describes the operational excellence plan. Now let's talk about performance communication meetings. These are held on a monthly basis with small groups of employees, and the meetings are led by trained individuals that have a thorough understanding of all of the information in the KPI report. The report is presented to employees, and the major focus is on the performance results and the earned incentive pay. This next communication system is continuing education by using Smart Talks. And if you recall, I just talked about Smart Talks. Smart Talks are online, on demand, animated, narrated explanations of whatever topic is at hand. So in this particular case, these are refresher training sessions. For example, you may want to put together a Smart Talk on the product quality KPI. In that Smart Talk, there would be an introduction of what product quality is, the importance of product quality to the company, review the performance measurement system, explain to employees again how to use the incentive pay fund charts for product quality, and more importantly, in the end, it offers specific actions that employees can take to improve product quality. The last of the four systems is the performance improvement team system. Approximately 30% of employees at all levels of the organization across most sectors of the economy believe their ideas for improvement are considered. That means that 70% of the employees believe their ideas for improvement are not considered. And that is a tragedy. Performance improvement teams will change that. They will significantly increase your company's capacity for innovation and creativity. One of the top 3 employee complaints is no one listens to my ideas for improvement. The performance improvement team system will put this complaint to bed. The real genius in leaders today is that they understand the value of harvesting the wisdom of their employees. The untapped potential residing in employees' improvement ideas and actions is the best prepaid path to operational excellence. Now just think about it. Your employees come to work every day, you're paying them a salary, you're paying them an hourly wage, and to what extent do you effectively capture their ideas for improvement? It's the employees that are closest to the action that see the massive opportunities for excellence that are not being harvested. It's time to tap that potential. Performance improvement teams will give a voice to employees, and they will create an army of problem solvers. If you are one of the few remaining companies that rely on suggestion boxes, it is time to burn those suggestion boxes and build a system to actively seek out and capture employees' ideas for improvement. We recommend that you take down those suggestion boxes, take them out in the back 40, and ceremoniously burn them. However, you should also tell your employees that you'll be establishing performance improvement teams that are trained and strategically positioned throughout the organization to capture the opportunities for betterment, to seek out the best ideas and execute those ideas to drive the operating performance of your KPIs. Every company, no matter how well managed, is target rich with improvement opportunities. Those opportunities for improvement are hidden in plain sight. They are everywhere and endless. When we establish performance improvement teams, we introduce them to 48 targeted areas for improvement. Now, here's a list just for fun. I put on a slide. Take a look at the top. It's waste, labor, materials, and supplies, unproductive work practices, out of control, overtime, wasted time, equipment downtime, rework, hiring the wrong person. So when we talk about rework, we often think of remanufacturing something or redoing something. Well, how many times do we have to redo the budget? How many times do we have to rehire someone for a position because we can't keep people there? Turnover is an incredible, employee turnover is an incredible example of rework. And then go over to this thing on the right-hand side of the slide called stupid spending, and who in the company has the most visibility to that stupid spending? It's the accounts payable clerk. And who are we least likely to go to discuss stupid spending? Think about it. As you think about the structure of your performance improvement teams, it's important to come to grips with every employee sees improvement opportunities from their vantage point or from their perspective. So department managers see certain opportunities, supervisors see other opportunities, operations and maintenance people see other opportunities, financial people see other opportunities. So it's important to understand that basic concept when, in fact, you're designing and staffing your performance improvement team. Let's do a lightning round walkthrough of the anatomy of the PI teams. In the upper right-hand corner, approximately 10 to 20% of the workforce are members of PI teams. The PI team is comprised of a coach who's responsible for the quality of the team and the outcomes. There's 2 co-leaders responsible for facilitating the session, and you have team members. Approximately 8 to 12 employees make up a PI team. Ideally, we'd like some representation on a multi-shift basis. The team stays in place in perpetuity. However, the members do rotate out on an annual basis, not all of them at once. They focus on problems and opportunities that are within their sphere of influence, things that they can control and impact. Their objective is clearly to focus on the KPIs, and they operate under the philosophy that if it isn't broke, let's make it better. They work on items that result in repetitive improvements. The PI teams go through about a 4-day training session, and once they're trained and up and running, their meetings last about 2 or 3 hours. We find that if they stay together much longer than that, their effectiveness dwindles. We'd like to see them get together at least twice a month. Companies provide them with a budget. Here's an example of a $1,000 budget to improve one particular item or any single item. This is interesting. We encourage them to start small and then go big. That frustrates some managers, but it's important to have the teams achieve things and get some scores on the board. And then in terms of accountability and results, they effectively meet with the senior management team to talk about what they've actually accomplished. And again, not necessarily what they're working on, and that's okay, but the real focus is on what have they delivered. Up in the right-hand corner, you'll see the word hub, H-U-B. A hub is nothing more, and it's an important item, especially if you have multiple PI teams. The hub is nothing more than a once-a-month meeting between all of the PI team coaches and co-leaders, and they gather and they simply talk about what they're working on. And the whole purpose of that is to avoid duplication. The PI team system requires the establishment of a pipeline of employee ideas to the PI team members. And here you see a little image on the far right-hand side. You see PI team members talking with other employees in their work area. To the left of that, employees can submit their concerns or recommendations in writing, not dropping it in a suggestion box, but literally handing it to a PI team member. On the left-hand side, you can see a cell phone there, and they're texting ideas for betterment or problem areas into the PI team. There's a cell phone set up for each PI team. And to the right of the cell phone, you see emails. And again, each PI team has their own email address. So any employee in the work area can offer ideas for betterment. In the middle, you see that brown bag, and that's an interesting one. On a regular basis, the PI teams would set up a brown bag lunch, invite in folks in, and in that meeting, it's a fairly a short meeting, an hour and a half, would discuss things that are going well, and also what are the opportunities for improvement that are not being realized. So the pipeline, multi-communication format into the PI team, offering opportunities, recommendations, suggestions, and ideas. Now that employees have electronic communication systems in place in terms of texting and emailing, it's time to shatter the barriers to operational excellence and give employees an opportunity to even submit ideas for improvement while on vacation. In a well-designed operational excellence plan, there will be ideas for betterment from performance improvement team system. That's a no-brainer. We can almost guarantee that will happen. There'll also be ideas for betterment that will emerge from every corner of the company. And here are 3 examples of ideas for improvement that came from outside of the performance improvement team system. The gentleman on the right was a relatively new employee, and he sat in on the monthly performance communication meetings during which they reviewed the results of each of the KPIs. And when they got to the cost productivity one, he was looking at all the expenditures, and he can see that they were spending $20,000 per month on a certain supply item. He went to management and engineering and said, you know, we don't need to use that stuff anymore, and we can save $20,000 a month. The evaluation was done, and his recommendation was approved. So on a go-forward basis, this company is now saving $20,000 a month based upon the idea from a gentleman who learned about the expense from the performance communication meeting. In the case in the middle, we have an employee who was looking at the whole lubrication process in a series of machine setups and concluded that we were clearly over lubricating, and so he made some recommendations. The recommendations were approved, so they're now spending less on lubrication, and not only that, but the machines are now running more, because when you do a lot of lubricating, in some cases you have to shut the machines down. On the left-hand side, you'll see another example. And this is a case where an employee said, you know, I can increase my productivity by 100% and not work harder. In this particular company, there are 6 of these machines, and over the years, the manufacturers of the machines came up with enhancements that made the machines easier and easier and easier to operate. So the labor content of operating the machine went down, and the employee was looking at the monthly report card and said, wow, employee productivity is important to this company, and you know, each and every one of us can get a nice bonus based upon improving that productivity. So he went to management and made the case that he now could operate 2 machines very effectively during the same 8-hour period, and consequently get 100% more units produced. The wisdom from within, 3 stories worth telling. Thank you. It's been fun. You now have the resources and the blueprint to make a lasting and seismic mark on your company. Here is my contact information. You're welcome to call me. You're welcome to email me. You're welcome to visit our website and also connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day.